Since the beginning of 2016, I've been rocking 3 Dell U2515H monitors, a set of 2560 by 1440 displays with a screen size of 25 inches. These have served me really well, with a high quality IPS panel, ample connectivity options, and a really nice looking bezel design, particularly when running in a multi-monitor configuration. But I've since gotten a bigger desk and I wanted to increase the amount of resolution that I had available. As a software developer with a little bit of video editing on the side, the more resolution that's available to me, the better. So I started looking at 4K displays. The first thing I did was run a pixels per inch calculator to work out what panel size I'd need to have a similar pixel density to my existing 25-inch monitors. Generally, to run a 2560 by 1440 monitor without needing to scale the interface at all, people use a 27-inch panel, but I was happy enough with 25 inches. At 25 inches, this is approximately 117 pixels per inch, whereas it becomes 108 pixels per inch at 27 inches. For comparison, a 1920 by 1080 display with a 24-inch panel size is just 91 pixels per inch. So basically, I'm already running at quite a high number of pixels per inch, which looks sharp but makes the interface quite small. So I knew if I wanted to run a 4K display at 100% scaling, I'd need a fairly large panel. I could already rule out a 4K panel at 27 inches. This is 163 pixels per inch, which is way too high to see anything, so I'd need to run everything zoomed in. The other problem with using operating system scaling is if it's not an exact integer, for example 2 times the resolution, the interface loses sharpness as the panel needs to split the pixel across multiple pixels. So that monitor that I couldn't run at full 4K resolution with no scaling was ruled out, as this defeats the purpose and the productivity gains of a high resolution monitor. So I decided to look bigger. Enter 32-inch panels. With a pixel density of 137 pixels per inch, it's still a massive jump from my 25-inch displays, but it was something I was willing to try out. There are a number of 32-inch panels on the market, and so I tossed and turned with what features I wanted. I knew I wanted USB-C, and I really wanted a monitor with small bezels. Surprisingly, in 2021, there are still a number of monitors with huge bezels, and given I was going to be running 2 of them side by side, that ruled them out for me. I was also looking at high brightness monitors for good HDR support. Generally, over about 800 nits, 1000 nits is getting on the noticeably bright side, but obviously the higher the better. But I found the only monitors with over 800 nits of brightness had VA panels. A VA panel has worse viewing angles and color reproduction when compared to an IPS panel. Unless I was looking to spend nearly $4,000 on a monitor, I needed to make a choice between an IPS panel or high brightness. Another thing to note is the refresh rate was a non-factor for me. As someone who doesn't game on my computer at all, whether the monitor had a 60Hz or 600Hz panel really didn't influence my purchasing decision at all. In the end, as you can probably tell, given that you've clicked on this video, I settled on the Dell U3219Q and ordered 2 of them in February this year. This is an IPS panel with a max brightness of 400 nits. In the end, I thought that since I came from an IPS panel that I was really happy with, I'd rather preference this over max brightness, which I'd likely not see very often given that my primary use for the display is just work. So let's begin with the design of the Dell U3219Q. The size of the physical monitor is 71cm by 41cm, and the display is about 69.5cm by 39cm, so approximately 93% of the surface is taken up by screen, which is awesome. The bezel around the whole width of the monitor is barely 1cm, which means you can hardly tell where one monitor ends and the next one begins. I honestly couldn't care less about the thickness of the panel, but I really love the look of tiny bezels, and I'm really glad they've gone for this look around the entire panel. You see some monitors with a thick bottom bezel for a logo or maybe the ports or something like that, and I really don't like the look of this. The other awesome thing is the bezels are flush with the rest of the display. Generally, thin and flush bezels are a staple of Dell's ultra-sharp monitor lineup, but I can't help but to be impressed given that some of the other display options that I was looking at are very generally unimpressive. To my eyes, display quality is pretty good. I'm not a professional video colorist, nor do I have any calibration tools or metrics, so I'd look to somewhere like Artings if you're looking for something with some more detailed testing and numbers. Anyway, to my eyes, the colors look rich, and I didn't notice any particular color tints. It's easy to read white on black text and black on white text. Even at 75% brightness and 70% contrast, the monitors are able to overcome direct glare from both in front and behind the display. I tried the HDR modes for a bit and found the colour to be a bit washed out. Like I said earlier, I'm using these monitors for work, not gaming or watching movies. Plus, according to Artings, you don't even get that much of a brightness increase when using the HDR modes. Back to my original question. Would everything on the screen be too small with no scaling? Honestly, at first, it was a bit. I tried increasing the scaling up one notch on macOS, but because this increase wasn't a perfect integer, e.g. a 2x jump making the effective resolution just 1920 by 1080, text and straight lines looked a little bit blurry and I really didn't like the look. So I stuck with the 100% scaling and I'm really glad I did. 4 months later, I never even think about the small size of the interface unless I'm like leant back on my chair or otherwise quite far away from the screens. And I am really grateful for the screen real estate. With over 16 million pixels across the two monitors, not including the resolution of the laptop display, I have so much room for activities. Combining the Mac OS apps Magnet, which includes keyboard shortcuts to lay out my apps across the screen, as well as Moom, which is for saving layouts, I think I've come up with the ideal setup. Generally, I have my primary display split vertically into two halves. One half is a web browser and the other half is my coding tool, VS Code. When I'm doing web development, this setup is useful to test the changes that I'm making to the code. And because half of the display is still 1920 pixels wide, I'm able to further divide that down if I want to have two code panels open side by side. Plus, I can see a lot of the web page and a lot of lines of code with 2160 vertical pixels. On my secondary monitor to the left, I have a unique setup. The right third of the screen is just slack, and because it takes up the full vertical height, I can see a lot of threads and all the different channels that I'm part of without any scrolling. Then, the remaining 66% is split into 4 quadrants of Spotify, a calendar, another web browser, and iMessage. Each of those windows is 1267 by 1080 pixels, which is actually more effective pixels than a MacBook display. Crazy. Maybe I've gone too much into detail about the resolution, but that's the main reason why I got these monitors. I'm an absolute productivity nerd. Connectivity is pretty good too, with either HDMI, DisplayPort, or USB-C available. There are also 4 USB-A 3.0 ports, 2 on the bottom and 2 on the left-hand side. Bear in mind they only run at USB 3 speeds if you plug them in via the USB-B downstream port and don't use USB-C to run your display. If you do use USB-C to drive your display, you'll only get those ports at USB 2 speeds. Not really a big deal, but just something to keep in mind. Fortunately, the display also comes with a USB-C cable and a DisplayPort cable, so there's plenty of options without needing to buy any cables. The USB-C option also charges your laptop with up to 90 watts available, which is pretty close to the maximum 96 watts a 16-inch MacBook Pro can take. Finally, I'll point out that the stand, as with all Dell monitors, is pretty versatile, allowing for height, rotation, swivel, and tilt options, although I actually have both of these mounted to a 100 by 100mm compatible VESA arm, so I don't even use the stands. Ultimately, the Dell U3219Q is a great choice. It's perfect for my productivity needs, allowing me to fit a lot on the screen at once. I love the design and tiny bezels, and the picture quality is fine, even in a bright room. Although it's a bit pricey, most IPS panels at around this size are the same price, so if you're tossing up between a couple, I can definitely recommend the Dell. Thanks for watching this Technologetic review. If you want to check out my older review of the Dell U251H, check it out in the top right hand corner of your screen, up here somewhere. Otherwise, subscribe to be notified of my updated desk setup video featuring these two displays.